Alright class, we're going to move right along here in Module 7, talking about the next topic, which is clip looping. And I'm on page 174, in case you're following along in your textbook. So in 101, we learned how to select a clip, duplicate it, or also to repeat it using the Edit menu. We talked about the repeat command and also the duplicate command. Again, repeat allows you to select a number of repeats, and the duplicate command simply adds a duplicate copy right next to the clip that you selected. The other way that you can quickly create loops is to utilize the clip loop dialog and also use a new type of trim tool called the loop trim tool. So let's start with the clip loop command, which you can find in the clip menu after you've selected a clip, like I have here. You go to clip, loop, or you can also use the shortcut key command, which is Option Command L. Just as a heads up, this is a very similar shortcut key command to the loop playback shortcut, which is Shift Command L. So this is Option Command L. And when you choose that option, you get the resulting dialog box, which allows you to do a number of things. You can select here the number of times you would like to have the loop repeated or the clip repeated. You can particularly choose a end length, or I should say an end point for a loop by simply typing in here, this is in bars, beats, ticks. You can also loop until the end of the session or until it runs into another clip on the same track playlist. And let's, for now, choose the number of loops. We'll say 6. And there's also this Enable Crossfade checkbox, which basically puts a little bit of a crossfade in between each loop iteration in the event that your audio clip was not properly trimmed and includes perhaps a very quick pop at the beginning of each loop iteration. This crossfade will help to mitigate that pop and click. And you can also click the settings here and you see the familiar fades dialog box that we've seen before, especially in the last chapter. And you can also change the shape of that crossfade, the in and the out shape, the link style, we learned about that, and also the placement of the crossfade and particularly the length of the crossfade. So you've got options there if you're interested in those, but for now we're going to keep them at their default settings. And we're going to click OK. Okay, wonderful. And as you can see here, we now have 6 iterations of this clip, and it is put in loop fashion. And you can tell that this was done using the clip loop command because you have the little loop icons at the very, very bottom of the clip. Just as a little tidbit of information here for you. On 174, they give you a few tips. Not only can you loop one clip on one track, but you can also loop multiple clips on other tracks. For example, if I wanted to loop all of these, I could still use the same Option Command L. I'm going to deselect this now and just hit OK. And as you can see, I now have loop iterations for all of my tracks, not just the top clip. There's something to remember though about this feature. If, let's say, I were to have taken this clip and I were to copy it and have another iteration of that clip, and let's just say I name this clip audio clip 2. Well, that didn't really work, did it? Okay, forget the renaming. Let's just say I have another clip here. Basically, what I'm trying to get at here is when you select multiple clips like this and you're going across tracks, only the first clip on a track that has multiple clips on the same track will be looped. So if this was a completely separate loop, let's just pretend, this loop would not be looped whenever I utilize the clip looping command. When I hit return, Notice how it copied and created the loops, but it put that second clip right at the end, smack dab up against the looped clip. So it only loops the first clip on a track playlist whenever that track playlist contains more than one clip, and that other clip happened to be in the same selection range. And they talk about that on page 174. Once you've made a clip loop, for example, I'll just get rid of this and quickly create loops here. You can go in and actually edit these, edit this loop by doing a number of things. You can select the clip and go back into the same dialog window and edit and say, for example, I only want 6 loops now. Okay, it trims it back for me. I can double click on this loop icon, as you can see with my grabber tool. The grabber tool has now changed, and I'm able to, I'm sorry, I have to have the selector tool. And I'm able to go into the same clip loop. You can also, with any tool, you can right-click, for example, and you can also choose a loop from that pop-up menu, and you can choose to edit it that way. So that's how you can edit loops after you've created them. Now, also, you can trim loops with both the standard trim tool and the loop trim tool, which we're going to learn about here in a second. Let's start with just the plain old trim tool. You can trim these clip loops. As you can see, when I move my trim tool over top of this clip, notice how there is a little arrow indicating that I am now able to trim this loop. When I click and drag, I'm able to trim as I have always been able to trim. This should not be new to any of us. However, what is important is when you hold down the Control key and you're using the regular trim tool, notice how I'm now able to trim loops based on the grid value, or it's snapping to a grid and it's allowing you to trim loops based off of the loop length. So that's just a very helpful shortcut to keep in mind, and they talk about that on page 176. Now, to utilize the other trim tool, we have this loop trim tool, which you can get to by either right-clicking on the trim tool. You can hit the F6 key and toggle through it. But once you have the loop trim tool selected, this is specifically geared towards allowing you to create more clip loops or more loop iterations without having to go into this clip loop dialog window, which we learned just a couple seconds ago. That's where you would go if you wanted to create more loops or edit that clip loop. So with the loop trim tool selected, we can now easily add loop iterations here. So once I have it selected, if I go to the top half of the track, it's very important that you go to the top half of the track. I get that same icon that I had before. But now when I click and drag, notice how I'm given additional loop iterations. Okay, so I'm able to extend loop iterations. And very similarly to the way I did things before with the regular trim tool, if I were to hold the Control key in, I'm able to temporarily snap to a grid and create loop iterations that way. Now, on page 177 and 178, there's a very, very important section that talks about the characteristics of clip loops that you should really, really, really read over. These are test questions. There's no doubt about it. I've seen them for a fact. And I'll just go over a couple of these with you. That way you can get an idea of what we're getting at here and why they're so important. On page 178, it talks about that option I told you about in the beginning, where if you have more than one clip on a track, you can only apply looping to that clip, the first clip on the track, not multiple clips on the same track. And that's also the second point talks about that same thing. If you're planning on wanting to loop particular sections of a clip, you can do that, but the only way you can do that, for example, if you wanted to have this particular portion of this clip looped, you cannot utilize the clip loop command and do this. Notice I have this selected, and I try to go to clip, and I'm not able to loop it because it's only a selection. But if I were to use the separate command and actually separate that selection out first, now I can utilize that clip looping command. So selections cannot be looped. Only particular clips can be looped. Let's see if I'm missing anything here. Again, these are very important to look over. As far as clip groups are concerned, you have to make sure that if you plan on having additional loop iterations of a particular clip, you need to group them first. So for example, if I have this part here, let's say I wanted to have all of these looped, and I wanted to have also this silence included in my loop. If I wanted to have this entire song section looped, I have to first create a clip group and go to clip group or Option Command G. I now have a group here, and I can loop a clip group just like I would normally loop these individual clips. And when I do this, notice how not only are the clips included in my iteration, but also the silence. And that hits on another point here. You can have what are called nested loops within a clip loop. So I have this loop iteration already, and when I just did that, I grouped the clips and then I looped it, so I have a loop within a loop. Very similar to our clip grouping discussion that we had earlier in Pro Tools 110, you can unloop clips by going to the clip and the unloop option. So let's just repeat that. I looped it, I have it selected, I can go to clip, unloop. Very important option though. You've got remove and flatten. When you choose remove, it will remove all loop iterations and it will return the source clip to its original state. So if I go to remove, okay, notice how it removed the loop iteration. This will make more sense if I actually ungroup the clip first for you. Sorry. Okay, so let me back up a second here. Let me loop this again 8 times. And let's say I go to the clip unloop and I choose remove. Notice how remove completely takes everything back to the starting position. I have no longer do I have any loops, and all of the loop iterations are gone. However, if I go back and I loop them again, and instead this time I choose to flatten, it's going to remove the loop characteristic of that clip loop, but it's going to keep all of the different iterations as separate clips. So that's very, very important to remember. And I think that takes care of that. So that's our clip looping discussion, and that goes from 174 all the way to 178. Please read over that again, and we're going to move on now to editing on the grid and audio suite.